Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on Realty Check. I'm your host Trish Williams. We're still in our series right now on a purchase from start to finish. We've gone over shopping for homes, what buyers can do to make better offers. We talked about what are the contingencies to be expecting in a contract. What are all the different things that we have? What do they mean? Last week we talked with a home inspector. What to expect out of that home inspection and what that whole process looks like that you're going to have when you get a home inspection. And today we're going to be talking about associations, HOAs. That's going to be a great topic. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into that. But before we get started, I wanted to make a request to the audience out there. I've been having a lot of requests for a show guest from all different topics. People all over the country have been reaching out to me wanting to be on the show and discuss different topics. So I want to hear from you guys what you want to hear about. So we're creating these series, and as we start going into wrapping this series up over the next couple weeks, going to be putting together a new one. So I would really love the feedback and know what you guys would like to hear about, whether it's renovations, fix and flips, different topics. Throw it out there. Let me know so I know what kind of guests to get booked for our future shows. And we are ready to get started. We have our guest with us today, Tiana Carroll with Keller Williams Realty. And Tiana, we are going to talk about that fun three-letter word, HOA.
HOA. Who doesn't love an HOA?
Yeah, a lot of people don't love an HOA.
A lot of people don't love an HOA.
Yeah.
I think it's come down to a love or hate thing, right? Some people won't buy without an HOA, and some people were like, nope, not for me.
Right, absolutely. And some people are very, very versed on what an HOA is. They know what it is, but there are people out there that do not know what that means. So What is an HOA?
Okay, so an HOA, or in the Valley, we refer to it as a CIC, the Common Interest Community. So your homeowner association or your common interest community is sort of the governing body of the neighborhood or the community that you're purchasing in.
Okay.
Okay, so they have a board of directors that's on the HOA, and they get to kind of decide how the community is going to look and what the community standards are. And so those are rules and regulations that you as a homeowner would have to abide by if you choose to purchase in that specific community.
Now, who is this board? Are they like just random people that are hired to manage the HOA?
No. Okay, so there are management companies that take over communities and stuff, and the people on the board tend to be the homeowners, people who are vested in that community and have an interest in it.
Okay, so they're basically overseeing, it's people that live there or own homes in that community are kind of overseeing the interactions of things that are going through there. Yet the management company, in most cases, there are some self-managed HOAs out there, but the management companies will coordinate vendors, take care of the budget and everything like that, but the board has to review and approve it.
Right, and the board, like you said, is usually the homeowners. People are invested in that community, and then you do have the management company that oversee the rules and regulations, and they're usually there to maintain property value, to make sure that the community keeps a certain integrity, architecture stays within the guidelines of the HOA, paint colors, plants. There can be a variety of things within that community's rules and their bylaws.
Yes. Are they all the same?
No.
That was a trick question.
No, they're all completely different, and that's one of the things when you're buying a home that you're going to have to decide if those rules and regulations inside the community are the rules and regulations that you can live with, because that's the reality. You're going to be there. You're going to have to follow those rules.
Right, and that was my next question is, if you're buying a home that's in an HOA, does that affect you?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. You're agreeing to whatever the rules are, the standards in the community. You're saying that I'm agreeing to live by these rules for as long as I own this home.
You absolutely are. You absolutely are.
Yep. Now, can they have restrictions for what you do with the home in the future? So say I bought a home in an HOA right now. I live in it. I'm owner occupied. I'm going to be an owner occupant. But in 5 years, I'm deciding to rent it out. Does that matter?
It does. It does. A lot of HOAs might have renter restrictions. A certain amount of residents have to be owner occupied or cannot be renters. And then, yeah, it's definitely.
Some HOAs even have 100% rental restrictions where they will
Right.
not allow rentals whatsoever, no matter what.
Right, and that's a thing that people do like, because some people believe that if you are owner occupied, you have that pride of ownership and you're going to take care of that property and you're going to maintain that neighborhood value, and it's more desirable to have less renters.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something that not only, if you're purchasing a home in an HOA, you need to look at that and start thinking about what are your future plans with this home, because things change, life changes, and if that is something that may be in your future, or you feel like it may be something that's in your future, you want to make sure that that rule's not there, because it could have an effect on you.
Right, and that's why it's so important when you do go into a contract in a community and you decide, yes, this is where we want to be, you're given a resale package, right? And in that resale package, there's a variety of information, right? The rules and regulations, the bylaw, the financial status of the community. Is it healthy? Is it in debt? Is there any sort of litigation going on with that community? And you're going to have 5 days once you get that package to review it. And once you have the package and you're reviewing that, you do need to be very aware. Is this something that I can live with? Is this going to be something that I can maintain? You have to maintain the fees, because you get in big trouble if you don't pay those HOA dues or those CIC dues. And all of that information's in the resale package, right? How much it's going to cost to transfer ownership over, what the dues are, and explain what they're used for, and what the community actually takes care of versus what you, the homeowner, are responsible for.
Yeah.
So,
and their reserves. So one thing that I think, when you get this HOA package, the CIC package,
right,
it's usually about 350 pages long.
and super exciting to read.
It's super exciting to read. Yeah, lots of fun. And it's a novel.
It's a novel.
And it is usually digital. Most
nowadays.
HOAs have gone paperless, so I very rarely see a actual physical printed copy of it.
Right, it's very rare. I've had to print them for customers before, but usually it is digital.
Yes, and those, a lot of times the clients will look at this, as most of us do, right? You look at this 350-page digital package and you're like, yeah, there's no way I'm reading that. But I tell them it's very important to review this. It's very important to read this, because this is what you're agreeing to live by from here on out.
Right.
And the budget, while, it just looks like a bunch of numbers and everything there, the budget is very important because it also has the reserves. If you're purchasing a home in an HOA that is not financially stable, that can cause future issues. Change in your dues, things that could happen, assessments, if they don't have room in their budget to cover, if you're in a townhouse or a condo community and the roofs are owned by the HOA,
right,
which some are not. If you're in there where the HOA is responsible for the roofs, but they don't have enough reserves in their budget to cover when that roof is due to be replaced, what are they going to do when it comes time for that roof to be replaced?
Right, and it's actually happened, right? So there is some communities around town who the board has been neglecting the buildings and the community, and they've depleted the reserves on who knows what. And when we went to purchase in there, it was a fact where the roofs did need tending to and stuff, and they were causing issues because the condensation from the air conditioning was leaking and getting into the units and causing problems on the inside. And the HOA was responsible for the outside, but they had no reserves, so there was no repairs being made. Not the best HOA to move into, guys.
Absolutely. And that is in that situation where they don't have enough reserves, but they do have they have an issue that needs to be addressed. That's where a special assessment comes in.
Right. Right.
And special assessment could be, and I've seen those in different cases where it's, there's going to be an extra $50 or $100 tacked onto your HOA dues for the next 5 years to cover this expense that we didn't have reserves for. And really, as a homeowner, there's not much you can do about it at that point.
No, there's not much you can do about it, and that was the case in this specific client, right? They were, the HOA dues had been inflated over $170 a month to what they originally were, and they were simply because they needed to fix these roofs, and then homeowners would have to contribute to those funds to make sure that those repairs got made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, the other thing is if you don't pay your HOA dues, what happens?
Oh, well, this is excellent. You're going to love this. So the HOA dues, the common interest community dues, are every bit as important as your actual mortgage and your taxes, because if you don't pay them, it's something that they can foreclose on your house. You could literally lose your house to this if you do not pay those dues. So
now let's talk about that for a second. So
okay, let's do that.
You bought a house for $400,000, for instance, and you're paying your mortgage every month on time, and you have $50 HOA, and you decide you're not paying that for whatever reason. And I've heard reasons. Oh my gosh, I've heard people say, "Oh, the HOA, they don't do anything. It's not worth the money. I'm not paying them anymore." And I'm like,
right.
"Yeah, that's
as
not
if
a good
it's optional,
idea."
but it's not optional. You are obligated. That's how come it's important to review what the dues are, what the money's going to be used for. Make sure that it's in your budget, because if you don't, they can foreclose on your house.
And I've literally seen foreclosures, HOA foreclosures with a balance of like $5,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a whole nother topic.
That's when we start talking about investors, right?
Yeah,
they can come in and swoop up these properties with stuff like
well,
that.
they do auction off these properties.
They do.
And literally like starting at $5,000 for these HOA liens. But there is a lot of other stuff to be understood when it gets into that.
Right,
There's
it's
a lot
not
of
just
risk.
run down to the auction and grab a house for $5,000, because if that were the case, we'd all have dozens of houses.
Yeah, because the mortgage companies do fight that, but HOAs are super liens, so they actually do have the right to foreclose.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of what happens afterwards, you could lose your house for not paying your dues.
You could.
Yes.
You could.
And that is one of the notifications that we send out to clients when we go into contract when they're purchasing in an HOA.
Right.
It says before you purchase in an HOA, you need to understand if you do not pay your dues, they can foreclose on your home.
Right, and it's important that you get that package. You have the 5 legal days to review it. If there's something inside, if you want to have purple Dalmatians and they don't allow purple Dalmatians in that community, then you can't consider that as a viable place for you to live for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Absolutely. So what if I'm out shopping for a home and, I find the home of my dreams?
Yes.
And that home has an HOA. I say, well, I want to make an offer on this home, but I need to know the rules first. Does it work that way?
Well, no, not really. What happens is when you get your purchase agreement and you go under contract, you have that fully executed contract, both parties have signed and we're agreeing to these terms.
Escrow opens.
Escrow opens, you put in your earnest money deposit, which is your skin in the game, right? The listing agent, the seller's representation, then has 2 days to order that HOA package. Once they receive the HOA package, they send the receipt to the buyer's agent and the buyer, right? You have to go through and make sure that everything that you need, the bylaws, rules and regulations, the financial health, what their transfer fees are, everything's in that package. You have 5 legal days to review it. And then you have, if you don't get that package within 15 days, then you have the right as a buyer to go ahead and cancel that contract if you choose to go that route. And then your earnest money is protected at that point.
Correct.
Right.
And the HOAs, even though they're ordered right after we go into contract,
Right.
we're waiting on the management companies to produce the package, and sometimes it takes 10 days. I've even seen times where it takes longer than 10 days.
I've been 25 days in waiting, going, we're close to closing, we need this package, where is it?
Yeah. Some of the self-managed companies, it's great. They're doing all this themselves. They do it to keep the budget low and to keep the
monthly
dues
expenses low.
Yeah, and it's great, those communities, but sometimes, there's sometimes with those self-managed companies where I've just had to wait extremely long periods of time for those packages to come through. So at the time that you receive the package, yes, you have 5 days to review.
Right.
Review those rules and regulations, review all those things. I say also if there's a specific item that you have a question about, ask your realtor to contact the HOA company and ask maybe that specific question. Nothing that, if it's not in writing, it is not official.
Agreed. Everything needs to be in writing, but you're absolutely right. Let's say you have a side gate and you wanted to put in a patio or an RV hookup or whatever, and before you purchase in that community, you want to know, hey, can I do this? You can go ahead and call the HOA and see if you can get a specific question answered, or at least how to go about getting these goals of yours accomplished through the HOA. But that does not in any way, shape, or form dismiss the importance of reading the package if you decide to purchase in there, getting the package, knowing everything that's going on.
Yeah, and when it comes to architectural changes, a lot of times they'll say, no, we can't give you an answer on that till we review it with the ARC. You do all these other things, which you have to do after you become a homeowner. But sometimes they have specific hard no's, like if the community whatsoever does not allow RV gates anywhere in the community, and that's in their CC&Rs, you can find that out with a simple phone call, like, no, we don't allow those, no circumstances, no review, we just do not allow that.
Right.
So it's good to get answers to those questions, but if they do say, yes, that's a possibility, or that would be allowed, still, when you get that package, review, confirm. Just because we got a verbal answer doesn't mean that anything's written in stone, but sometimes we'll know if it's a definite no on some things.
Right. Yeah, you can get some answers quickly and easily with just a phone call, but all the information you're going to need is going to be in that very long packet, including what you can change architecturally, what paint colors might be, plants that you're able to use, animal restrictions. Yeah, there's all sorts, and it's individual, right, to the HOA. So it's important when you do decide, like, oh, this is my dream home, I need to live here, that you review the HOA and make sure that that standard of living coincides with your standard of living, because you don't want to make a mistake.
Absolutely. My HOA has 6 color schemes for the exterior of the home. You have to pick one of the 6.
Right.
You don't have, you can't create a new color scheme and add that in. You can absolutely paint the home. You still have to send in the whole packet, the review, get authorization.
Absolutely.
But you have to pick from one of the 6.
Right.
Yeah.
And that goes again to community standards, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and going into that, we talked a little bit about it, but what if you want to change things or do renovations on the exterior? What do you do? Say you already own the home and you're wanting to do these exterior changes, whether it's paint the house, put in new grass, change your bushes, tear out some bushes. Maybe they have some ugly old bushes and you want to tear them out and put new ones in. What happens? What do you do? Are you allowed to do that?
Okay, so depending upon the HOA, right, they have their rules and regulations of what they will and will not allow, but pretty standard practice for making architectural changes or yard changes, especially the front yard because it's visible from the road. You usually have to have a plan drawn up, whether you do it yourself or you have somebody do it, then you have to submit it to the HOA, then it goes through the board and they have to approve it and say like, oh yeah, that looks great, let's do that, or oh, that doesn't go with our color scheme, so no, that's not going to work, right? And then you're either given permission to make these said changes or not, and then you can go back to the drawing board. All right, they didn't like this about my plan, let me rework it and see if I can get this done.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So it all goes for a review with the board.
Right.
But what about things inside?
Okay, so this is, again, specific to the HOA, but there are things that they do sort of regulate on the inside. Like sometimes if you're in a townhome or in a condominium and you have shared walls or people live above or below you, then there are going to be certain things that need to be taken into consideration. Like if you're going to change the flooring, a certain grade of sound barrier needs to be done. Or sometimes like if the front windows are visible from the road, you can't have like neon green curtains hanging in front. Like they have to stay, white or neutral, whatever those rules or regulations are. So usually an HOA will be more for the outside, for the community, keeping those standards up. But some HOAs do have rules and regulations on what you can do inside the house in consideration to making changes. Also in consideration to your lifestyle. I just ran across an HOA the other day that didn't allow for reptiles in the home.
Huh.
Yeah.
Was it a condo or a single family?
It was a townhome.
Okay, so they're attached, yeah.
Yep, it was attached, and they were like, no reptiles. And I was like, that's pretty broad.
Yeah, and that is, I've seen a lot of, and especially more so in attached, where you have shared walls and things like condos and townhouses, pet restrictions. You can't have more than a certain amount of dogs, or the animals must be under a certain weight limit.
Right.
You do see that a lot more in attached communities. What I'm seeing more of as well recently is, for the longest time, a lot of HOAs had no restrictions on what you did in the back.
Right, the backyard was like a free-for-all. You could do whatever you want. You want a tiki bar, do a tiki bar.
Yeah, except for if it was, if it was visible, like up to 6 inches above the wall, then it was like, okay, because the neighbors are going to see it. But there was there didn't seem to be a lot of restrictions on backyards with HOAs. And now I'm starting to see those restrictions a lot stricter. They're even on what type of landscaping you have. Because the landscaping that you put in the backyard, if you put, these beautiful flowers all along your wall, and you're watering those flowers, and those flowers start deteriorating your neighbor's yard, the HOA gets involved.
Right. Right.
So
I've seen that too, right? Like if you're adding a patio cover to the back of your house, it can't be taller than the eaves or something to that effect. They're really trying to keep, like I said, those property values, the standard of the community together, and they do make those restrictions. And that's one of the things when you do buy inside a common interest community, you have to decide. Some people don't like CICs or HOAs because they feel it takes away their individuality or their self-expression, or they're not going to be able to live whatever way they want. If they want to have like a striped front door and the HOA says no, then you can't have that striped front door. So for some people, there's a lot of us out there that choose not to live in HOAs or CICs for that reason.
So why do you think people do choose to live in HOAs?
Okay, so remember at the beginning when I said it goes back to you either love HOAs or you hate them? The people who choose to live in HOAs usually like they don't love that they're being restricted or that they have to follow rules and regulations, but they believe that if they're maintaining this property and the community looks uniform and it's neat and clean, and you don't have broken down cars in the driveway, or you have parking restrictions where you have to use your garage instead of parking on the street, that it leaves a clean and neat community. It's standard of living, it's perception of the community, and just keeping those home values higher. Because in general, CIC communities tend to have higher home value.
And
because
this
of that.
Is true. Yes, yeah. This is true. And I personally have lived in a neighborhood, in the past where it was a very good neighborhood. Most of the neighbors took pride and kept their houses up. Right. But it only took that one neighbor. And there was that one neighbor that had like 24-hour yard sales and all kinds of stuff outside. And it's just, it only takes that one person to just make the rest of the neighborhood look ran down, and it's not, it's not, you don't really have much control over that happening, or that person that wants to paint their house pink. Nothing against you people that love pink houses, but most people, most of the other neighbors don't really love having a pink house in their neighborhood.
Right. That is a very individual thing, right? And so if you do want to have that individuality and to be able to do what you want in your living space without any sort of rules, regulations, restrictions, or governing body, then HOAs are not for you. But yes, you're absolutely right. It does change property values when you do have somebody on your block or in your neighborhood that is a hoarder, or let's say they work from home as a mechanic, or they're a car collector, and they have cars all over the place and up on jacks and stuff. That does change it, especially for potential home buyers when they're driving through a neighborhood and they have to see that. Or the worst is when you go to show homes and there's no parking on the street and and you're walking a half a block just to get to the house, then homeowners are like, oh, what if I have friends come over? Where are they going to park? What's this going to be a part of? So having a governing body does help with things like that.
Correct. And your HOA dues, if you're moving into a home or you're purchasing a home and the dues are $100 a month, will they always forever be that amount? Can they change?
They can change. They absolutely can change depending upon the health of the community, the litigation, what the community is responsible for. And we kind of touched on that when we were talking about the roof situation, right?
Special assessments.
Right. If you have special assessments, they can make those adjustments just for the greater good, if you will. Yeah. Now you'll be notified. It's not like they're going to change it today and next month you're like, oh, wait, my dues are going up $100 a month. You're going to be notified. It's going to have to go through the board. These homeowners are going to be told what's going on. So there's going to be a little bit of wiggle room, but there's really not much you can do about it. If they decide to change the fees, they're changing the fees.
Well, do you have any say on this? Now, when the board meets, are you able to know what they're meeting, what they're discussing? How does that work? Can you be on the board? How do you be on the board?
Yes, and yes to all of it,
good.
Right? So if you do move into a common interest community, when they do go through and change board members, you have the ability to be elected.
It's you run for it just like as if you'd run for any office.
Right. You get a little name badge that you're like, elect me, pick me. No, I'm just kidding. So, you have the ability to be elected onto this board. You get notified when these board meetings are happening. You know what's going on. They're not trying to keep anybody in the dark. It's not a secret society, right? They're letting everybody know, and they're letting people know why they're doing these.
And they do have meetings. Some HOAs have monthly meetings, some have quarterly meetings, bi-monthly. There's different, whatever the community is, you'll have those meetings. You do get to go be a part of that. You do get to vote. You do get to be in those board meetings. Those board meetings are held with the homeowners. One of the things that I see is the most discouraging, I guess, in HOAs is, I have an HOA, I'm in an HOA. There's not many homeowners that ever show up to the board meetings, but and then there's complaints, and it's like, well, you should have been there at the meeting because that was discussed. So go to those meetings. You do have a say in your community. It is a community board.
Right.
So those things you can have control over certain things by attending those meetings, by being active. And being a board member is not a paid position.
Nope.
It is volunteer work, so.
Yeah, but it goes back to that pride of community too, right?
Yeah.
And you do have a say, you do have a stake, you're invested in that community. So if it's important to you, go to the board meetings, make sure that you're aware of what they're discussing and what's happening, so that way you're not caught off guard. Absolutely.
And I have had clients, or a specific client in the past who had her HOA board. She was amazing at accounting, just a numbers gal. She was really good at it, and she joined the board, and she had worked out their accounting and actually got the dues in the community lowered, which is unheard of. I wish she would move into my community.
Yeah, I love a number wizard. Come fix all my bad stuff too.
Fix them all. We all love that. So being active and being a part of it, you do have a say. You can have some control over what's going on there.
Right, at least a voice in the conversation.
Absolutely. So that's a good thing. So, I mean, overall, it depends on your lifestyle.
Right.
What's going to work for you, what's good for you. HOAs are not all bad. No,
they're not all bad. They're not all bad. Listen, it's your choice. It's your purchase. It's going to be your choice if you choose to be in an HOA for whatever reason, and they do a lot of good.
Yeah. I feel like they're also still kind of new. And by new, I'm saying, 20, 30 years, I don't know how long they've been around, but HOAs haven't been around for, a substantially long amount of time. So
I don't know. I haven't been around for a substantial amount of time, so I'm
neither
just kidding.
have I. No, but I guess, new over in Vegas, like around the city. You know, there
Right.
was always, you know, like Lake Las Vegas and those different master planned areas that had
Right.
associations, but just for regular subdivisions to have associations is kind of a newer thing over,
Yeah.
you know, the past maybe 20 years.
Right.
But it's starting to be more and more common. Now every new construction home, subdivision you see built has an HOA. Very seldomly do you see anything new developing that does not have one. So I do feel like there's a lot of things still working out in some aspects of it. And you know, people are learning to adapt to this and kind of
Yeah.
learn the way it goes.
Work through those growing pains.
Work through the growing pains.
Right.
Yes. So if it's not for you, there's plenty of areas in Vegas that do not have associations.
Yeah, there's some great spots in Vegas that don't have associations.
Yeah, and there's a lot of you know, a lot of older areas in Vegas that are being renovated and they look amazing. And there are some places that that I've come across where they have no association yet. The neighbors have gotten together and kind of like have their own kind of neighborhood agreement
Right.
on what is the standard around here. So they do some enforcing based off the CCNRs. Not a common fact, but most communities do have CCNRs in place on the title, on the deed, even though they're not part of an association.
That's true.
And there are some communities out there that have really worked together to keep those enforced.
Right.
So there's some that don't even know they exist, and no one's ever looked at them or enforced them. But there are some communities out there that really do, just to keep those values together, work together to enforce them.
Right, and I think that's the common goal, right? It's a standard of living, and they just
Yeah.
want to make sure that everything is to their standards and your standards. You're like-minded people buying in the same like-minded community.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we all. No one wants to buy a home and have your values plummeting. So,
Right.
And you definitely want that future growth, that future appreciation, and a lot of that comes with the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
thank you so much, Tiana. If people want to ask
you're
you more
welcome.
questions about anything, how do they reach you?
You can call or text to my cell anytime you want, or you can reach me by my email, 702housecenter@gmail.com.
All right. Thank you so much for coming
Thank
here
you
on
for
the
having me,
show.
Trish. It was such an honor.
It was
Yay.
so great for you to be here. So thank you. And everybody stay tuned. Next week on Realty Check, we're going to be talking about appraisals. So
Ooh, that's fun, especially in this market.
that is a bad word these days. Just no one wants to even hear about it. So
Yeah, who cares? We're just waiving contingencies on that now anyway.
yeah, we're going to talk about appraisals, what they mean, how they affect your purchase, of course, why realtors are all bent out of shape about appraisals, you know, because that's always something you hear is like, oh my gosh, what about the appraisal? The appraisal's coming. That's always our stress point, right?
Yeah, well, it's kind of important when it comes to the lending process, and most people finance, so it's
Yep.
a biggie.
Great. Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're going to have a lender on here, and he's going to talk to us about like how appraisals affect lending, what's the criteria that they look for, appraisal conditions on those fixer-upper houses. So we're going to have a good conversation next week as well.
Oh, I can't wait to see that episode.
Yes. Thank you guys for joining us, and please leave me feedback. Let me know what you want to hear. Write us a review, share our show with your friends, and we'll see you next week on Realty Check.